Good day. My name is Paul Horrigan. Welcome to the Veterans Corner. I'm a member of the Veterans Advisory Board in Westborough, and today we have the honor of introducing Adrianna Baltimore, the unanimous choice for Grand Marshal of the Veterans Day ceremonies on November 11th in Westborough. Adrianna was selected unanimously because of her activities and her history as a veteran. And I present to you Adrianna Baltimore.
Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Adrianna. Your background certainly has given you life experience plenty.
Definitely.
And today we'd like to explore some of your background, to include your military background. I think that you have a lot to say and would like to hear it for sure.
Well, I guess to begin with, it's always good to go to the beginning. And I would say that the Great Depression and I arrived in the same year, 1930. It was not an easy time for any family. And my father and his father and brother were in the construction business that was doing very, very well, and we lived high off the hog. This is before I came on the scene, and my family was. And it went belly up in the crash of '29, and we had nothing, literally nothing. And so it was difficult times, and my father, who had a wonderful work ethic and would work at any job, at any time of day or night, and go wherever he had to go. But for not just for him, but for everybody, jobs were few and far between. So we, moved a great deal, and the reason for that was that going back a little bit, landlords were also struggling at the time. So for them to try to get along, they would offer rent-free for a month to any tenant, so they could get a tenant in, and hopefully then they'd be, paying after that. And we'd take those offers, and many times Daddy did get enough work where we could pay the next month's rent, and we lived for several months. And then there'd be a time when he didn't, and we'd be evicted. The upshot of all of that is by the time I was 10 years old, we had lived at 15 different addresses in Somerville, Massachusetts, which, if I did not mention, is my hometown and where I was born, raised, and schooled.
Very good. So you certainly had a life experience.
Yes, I can even to this day remember I had a childhood where many, many times I went to bed hungry, and not because I had been naughty, but simply because there was no food.
That upbringing prepared you well for life.
Yes, it certainly did. It prepared me for the fact that there were always going to be some hurdles that you might need to deal with.
Yep. Well, I and the board were fortunate enough to meet you while you were serving and are serving on the American Legion board, and we're delighted to have you on there. And you were nominated because of your efforts on behalf of veterans. And as I said before, it was a unanimous decision that you would be our Grand Marshal this year. So we certainly congratulate you and ask you, were you surprised that you were selected to be the Grand Marshal?
Surprised is kind of the wrong, I was surprised, but I would say more, I was overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed. I had previously, at one of the meetings, received the Quilt of Valor. I thought I was going to fall off the chair when that happened, because the lead up to that was Teresa, and I'm sorry, Teresa, that your last name slips my mind, but she gave a wonderful presentation, and there was no mention of who the person was, and I was anxious to, hear who was going to be receiving this. And at the very end of her talk, she said, and the veteran is here today, and it's Adrianna Baltimore.
Oh, wow.
And I thought I was going to fall off the chair.
Well, that's great.
So to say I was surprised is true, but overwhelmed
That's
and deeply, deeply honored by
great, I know.
that. And then to have this honor of being Grand Marshal. I have marched in the days when I could walk around very easily. I have marched in many, many veterans parades, and I love marching. I love that whole thing. And I have seen many, many Grand Marshals, and now it's me.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. That seems to be the universal response to that. First of all, you're totally humbled. You say,
Yeah, absolutely.
why me? And,
Yeah.
I remember 10 or so years ago, I was in the Grand Marshal along with Bob Sylvester, and I couldn't believe it when they called me up and said, you're going to be the Grand Marshal.
Yeah.
Because you're used to all these people.
Well,
prior,
I know. I mean, Billy Graham,
Yeah, yeah.
Nixon, Wayne Newton, even. So, I mean, you're in the company with a lot of
Sure.
notables,
It is.
but locally, it's a big deal,
Sure
and
it is, yeah.
I am deeply honored. And I'm going to get to ride in a Jeep. I hope it's good weather.
Would you please give us a short summary of your military career, so to
Sure.
speak, and your assignments?
Sure. Well, I actually wanted to enlist right after high school, but my dad would have none of that, and my mother sort of agreed, so I just put it on hold until I was old enough, where I didn't need their permission, and I went into the Air Force. And, excuse me,
What year was that? Early 50s?
it was in the early 1950s that I went in, and it was, when I enlisted, I was also made the person who was in charge. For some reason or other, I guess people saw some leadership abilities, because I was put in charge of all of the people that enlisted with me. I had all their papers and everything, and just had to act like the mother hen, probably because I was a little older than these kids that were right out of high school. And so we went to Lackland Air Force Base, and we're in. Now, at some point, maybe you would like to have me give my talk that I have about going into the military. It's very funny, but I won't give all of it here. And of that experience of when you first arrive at the base and what happens. So, we got our uniforms and brogans, which these god-awful black shoes that you wore with ankle socks that you turned over at the top, and a pith helmet. Now, that's not very pretty. And I had on a very fashionable print dress, so you didn't quite get your uniforms because you had to be measured so that they would know roughly what size, and I say roughly what size you wore. So I was marching around in these brogans, and unfortunately, I didn't bring a picture of me in that dress and the brogans, but I did bring a picture of me in the pith helmet. And am I speaking into my basket here and nobody can hear me in the audience?
No, you have your loudspeaker there.
I did bring sorry, I'm pulling out the wrong thing, of course. It would be nice if I had these more handy. What did I do?
I think we got to redo part of this.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, was I talking into my
No,
basket?
your speaker's
okay.
up there anyway.
Oh, hello. Anyway, if you can visualize a print dress with this outfit. And this is the, in basic training, all our uniforms were designed by a fashion designer. I don't remember his name. And
You can show it to the camera.
I don't remember the name of the fashion designer, and believe me, it's totally forgettable.
That's good.
But this is the outfit that we wore when we were policing the yard and doing, PT.
Yep.
And there's the pith helmet. When I was assigned this pith helmet, if it weren't for my ears, it would have been down around my mouth. So I had to stuff tissue paper in the helmet because we wore this a lot. Anyway, basic was very, very interesting, and I was elected wing chief by my sister Wavs. And that meant that you just kind of kept things in line, that
Sure.
nobody got terribly rowdy, and that everything was always in line for the inspections, of which we had many. Some were announced inspections and we knew about them in advance. Some were surprise, but I received many commendations, and there were roughly about 20 young women in each wing, and our wing always got a commendation on tidiness and cleanliness. So basic training went very well. It was in the summer, and Texas in the summer is no place that you want to be because it was hot as you know what. And classes were, no air conditioning, and the windows would be open. And we were instructed that if we felt we were going to doze off, that we would just get up and stand at the back of the room at parade rest. We didn't have to ask permission, just could do that. Well, did I laugh at that? I had never in my life fallen asleep in a class. Would never happen. I was the first one up at the back of the room. So, all because of the heat. I had never sweated in my life to the extent of wetting, clothing, but I did in Texas. It was pretty hot.
How many weeks was
It
basic
was
training?
a 10-week course, although I think that after that they shortened it to 8 weeks, but not in my class. We went the full length of time.
So after basic, where'd you go?
After basic, I was sent to administrative specialist school in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which was quite an experience to go out west. I'd never been that far in the country. And Wyoming is beautiful. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous country. I really, thought I was going to be very happy there, and I certainly was. The interesting first thing that I noticed about Wyoming was the barracks arrangement. In Texas, we had 2 girls to a room. We had separate bathroom facilities in each wing where we had separate shower stalls and, of course, closed, door toilets and so forth. When I got to Cheyenne, Wyoming, it was open bay barracks where you had a cot and a metal closet was your, wardrobe and a foot locker, and was everybody in together in the showers. They did have doors on the toilet, but for those of us, all of us who were modest, modesty went down the drain with the first shower that you took. It was quite an experience. But Cheyenne was interesting. I was in Lackland in the summer and Cheyenne in the winter, and I should have gone into the service at a different time. And so I was in Texas in the winter and Cheyenne in the summer, because the winters in Cheyenne are very, very cold, and the snow comes very quickly, but it also disappears very, very, quickly.
How long were you in Cheyenne?
We were supposed to start school. We arrived in September, and school was delayed because of whatever reason I've long since forgotten. And so what we were doing, we were policing the yard, and that lasted about one morning with me, when I heard that if you didn't want to police the yard, you could sign up for work if you had the qualifications for any job. And so I immediately signed up for work and was sent to the library, and that job only lasted one morning because the staff sergeant who was in charge of the office at the Officers Club saw on my qualifications list that I could type and I had other office skills, and he scooped me right up, and I went over there, and it was the most fantastic job that I had the whole time I was in the service, because the wives of the officers, I got to know everybody, and because the information passed through the office, and they got to know me. And the wives would run various events like fashion shows
Yeah.
and teas and what have you. And they always invited me.
Oh, nice.
So, and the offices had me, I could have my meals there and what have you. And it was very, very cushy.
That was a good assignment.
Well, it was not only that, but I had no idea I was being paid because, I was being paid the measly $80 a month at the time, but I thought it went along with it. But a check arrived later on when I was at Westover. I got this big check for all this office work. I loved Francis E. Warren Air Force Base and my duty there. And the interesting thing about Francis E. Warren as an Air Force base was absolutely no airfield. Yeah. So,
Where did you go after
great
Warren?
thinking on the Air Force's part. So my work was, really just going to school, there. And I did very well. In fact, I ended up with the highest grades in my class and was the honor student and received all kinds of recognition for that. They wanted me, my first sergeant, I came up with all kinds of jobs. Would you be interested in staying here to do this or that? The people at the Officers Club were trying to work it where I could be the permanent secretary at the Officers Club. And I
So
did
you always had this skill of communication and execution,
I got along with people and so forth and fitted in. But the thing is, I wasn't so sure. I thought, well, gee, maybe I might like to get California or Hawaii or something.
Yeah.
So I'll sort of wait for my orders to come through. And I even was approached for something in Gulfport, Mississippi, but I said, thank you, no. I don't think I want that. But then when my orders came through, it was nice in a way. It was Massachusetts, but so much for traveling and seeing the world if you're in the service. So Francis E. Warren was a wonderful experience.
So you come
I
back.
loved it.
Do you come back to Devon's?
No, I was my permanent duty station was Westover.
Westover,
and when I was done at the end of school, I received a furlough for Christmas.
Yeah.
And went home for Christmas, and then I reported in at Westover in January. Shortly, I think it was. Actually, on my birthday that I reported in.
Really?
I'd have to look at my records, but it was that first week in January that I reported in at Westover. And, there, interestingly enough, I worked in a hangar. So I was around airplanes all the time. And, of course, I was with Military Air Transport. MATS was the group that was at Westover at that particular time. So big cargo planes.
Yeah, right.
So I worked in a hangar, and the hangar accommodated these planes so that the offices were on each side of the building, and you had stairs that went up and a little railway, a little a little walkway that had a railing with it, and the offices were off that, and that's where I worked in personnel.
Okay.
Yeah, and so it was very, very interesting. Yeah.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
And you said you were discharged in 55?
1955,
Yeah, very good,
just as SAC was going to come in to Westover. They were changing over, and MATS was going to go to McGuire in New Jersey. In fact, my discharge was held up because my records had gone to McGuire.
I get you,
And it took them forever to get them back, and the records came back, but without the payroll records, and you can't be discharged without the payroll records. So the date of my discharge is a little misleading because it was actually longer before I got out of the service. Yeah, it was still 55, June.
Now you're still to this day working on behalf of veterans. How do you look at that? How do you look at service and veterans? How do you evaluate it?
If you're talking about service in general, I think that my service was a great teacher for how to live in a diverse community and get along,
Right.
and sometimes be with people that you absolutely, I was billeted with young women in, well, let me back up a little bit, and you don't need to erase this. I met wonderful women in basic training that I remained friends with for years. And the same at Francis E. Warren. In fact, one of my dearest friends from basic also was assigned to Francis E. Warren. And wonderful women there. I was billeted in Westover. I lived on the base, and which was, money saving. And but I was billeted with a lot of young women that I got along with, but I would never care to make friends with. They were rowdy. They were the type of women that many people thought this is the type of woman that goes into the military, and so untrue.
Yeah.
And so that was not, as I say, I got along with people because I was going to have to live with them, but they were not anybody that I would care to go out with or really make friends with. But this is what I'm trying to say, that a lot of times this happens and you learn how to live in a diverse community and get along with people, which trains you for life.
Sure.
Because wherever you work, unless you work alone, you have your own business, even if many times I worked for, one boss, it was just me as the secretary and the boss, you still have to learn how to get along with that person.
Yeah.
And I think that's great groundwork for that. Plus, a lot of times you're taking orders from people that downright well you're smarter than, but they've got one more stripe and the authority. So you learn two things. You learn how to accept authority, even if you don't like their judgment, and also to respect the fact that somebody has the right to tell you what to do when you've got to pay attention to it.
As you and I were talking about earlier, that would do well for
for a lot
all
of people,
youngsters,
to learn how to get along, with people and to listen to what they have to say. You don't have to like it or, agree with it or what have you, but you realize that they think differently than you do.
And that's universal service, basically.
Absolutely.
Right?
No, I'm in favor of 2 years would do everybody a lot of good.
Sure.
It sure wouldn't do them harm, but would do them a lot of good.
I certainly agree. Yeah. Well, you're still working on behalf of veterans, so this is part of the Grand Marshal position that you're still working on behalf of veterans. Now, recently with the American Legion, Adrianna, you ran a bingo night for the American Legion, and that was really the first money raiser that we embarked upon since we resurrected the American Legion. And it was a grand success, and I want you to just tell us a little bit about generally how you put that together.
A lot of work. Well, it got put together with the help of a lot of, people, and I do want to thank all of the businesses in Westborough that I approached, the various eateries, because this was a fundraiser. So needless to say, our prizes for bingo weren't going to be cash because we were going to try to keep as much of the cash that we earned for the fund that we use in order to do a lot of worthwhile community, things, scholarships and sponsorships. So I want to thank all of them, and I have sent thank you letters to all of them, but to every single one of them that I approached asking for a monetary gift card.
Right.
I had a flyer to show them and a little spiel that I gave them, and many times before I finished what I even had to say, they would say, sure. Westborough businesses were so pleasantly responsive. They made my job easy, going out and asking for something. They made it very easy. So but it still took a lot of time to
Sure.
go around to those places. And I had the help of Stephanie Keene, who is the outreach caseworker at the senior center, who drove me around and also came in with me, and we were
Very nice.
colleagues.
I didn't
Yes,
realize that.
very,
Very
very
nice,
nice. And Alma Dimash offered the senior center as the place where
Yeah.
we could have the bingo, so we did not have to deal with renting.
Plus, Alma, you're right, we had a lot of thanks due to Alma for having her staff there and helping
their
us.
willingness of their
yeah.
staff, and two of the van bus drivers, Dave Farrar and Brad Huff, were kind enough when I approached them about handling the raffle tickets for our raffle, which was big money scratch tickets. They were quite willing to do that.
Yeah.
And also, I want to thank Fran Sauer for his work in being the bingo caller.
He did a great job, yeah.
And I can't forget to mention my grandson and his roommate, both 22-year-old
his
young
mother.
men
Yeah.
who came out from Cambridge, and were the fellows that went around the hall whenever somebody called bingo and read
Yep.
off their cards, whether they were a winner or not. And then my daughter came and was very, very helpful.
She was.
Plus, my son-in-law arrived and took pictures at the end of the evening, and his folks were there for the whole evening. So the family, we're
Yeah.
supportive of one another in everything that we do.
And I think that was very evident in the results, because they did a fine job.
Well, and I
you
want
know.
to say, and the commander was there,
Yeah.
who played, not only played bingo, but darn it all, he won a prize, which he donated to the bingo caller. But
That was pretty nice.
there you are. So you brought luck to the whole thing. But yes, it was quite
was an
a
outstanding
success.
event, yeah.
It was quite a success.
You know, the American Legion sponsors a girls' basketball team, boys' baseball team. They sponsor a camp for a Westborough resident in the summertime. They have an outstanding scholarship program for the president of the National Honor Society, a Westborough senior, because of the effort that the National Honor Society president puts in to generate labor for the American Legion, where we put the flags on the cemeteries, when we retrieve the flags at the cemeteries. So there's a lot of work goes into that, and the National Honor Society president typically generates the people to accomplish that. The American Legion also participates in the ceremonies for Veterans Day and the parade for Memorial Day.
Mm-hmm.
And we're looking to do more. We participate in the clothing drives and such. So the funds that you raise through the bingo goes directly to those
Yeah.
positive projects that we try to run, and you need money to run them.
Yeah.
And so that's really the only way we generate funds.
Yeah.
But the American Legion is growing in town, and we intend to continue to grow the organization. The Veterans Advisory Board is involved in all of the functions that involve veterans, and the VFW is likewise involved in support of veterans. So, we think that Westborough has approximately 550 veterans, and the advisory board, the American Legion, and the VFW are the organizations that have a mission to support the veterans
Yeah.
and make Westborough a very welcoming place for veterans.
Yeah.
And so we're constantly reaching out to get more veterans involved in some of these programs. We work with the Veteran Service Officer to assist veterans on their disability applications, or any of the programs that are offered by the VA are facilitated by the Veteran Service Officer and the Veterans Advisory Board. So the three organizations are always searching for people,
Yeah.
like you, who are working on behalf of veterans. So we really give an open invite to all veterans to consider participating in the American Legion, VFW. The American Legion's next meeting is November 21st at the Westborough Senior Center at 10 a.m. in the morning, and everyone, all veterans are welcome. Today, again, in summary, we have a great Grand Marshal in Adrianna Baltimore, and we're very proud of her, and we thank her for her service. And as she said, she could talk a long time about veterans' activities, and I believe she could. But we'd like to thank her for accepting the Grand Marshal position, and we're delighted and feel that she's a true representative of veterans. So thank you, Adrianna.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I'm deeply honored.
Yep. Thank you.